You've identified individuals who have misled the committee. I'm not going to use the word who misled. I want to know who lied to committee, who lied to parliamentarians, who lied to Canadians. Identify those players, please.
This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
Isn't it ironic that the people that are pointing fingers are the ones with the dirtiest hands? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll start with Mr. Barrett, please, for 6 minutes.
In the Auditor General's report, she said, quote, "We found situations where agency employees were involved in the ArriveCAN project, were invited by vendors to dinners and other activities," end quote. Mr. McDonald, were you invited to dinners, meals, or other activities by any ArriveCAN vendors? Yes or no, please?
If I was invited to any dinners or activities with vendors, I disclosed it to my supervisor.
Question, sir. The question was, and I'll repeat it for you, were you invited?
I'm telling you the truth. I had been invited, but...
Okay, that's a yes. Mr. Rotano, were you invited to dinners, meals, or other activities by ArriveCAN vendors?
At the time during ArriveCAN, no. And if any...
Were you at any time, before or after the ArriveCAN project, at an event, meal, or activity with any of the vendors who were contracted by the Government of Canada to work on the ArriveCAN project?
So, Mr. Chair, thanks for the question. The short answer is I was at one dinner, and that was disclosed to my boss, and which at Mindone at the time. In fact, my boss was present. So any activities or suggestions of gifts or hospitalities were openly and transparently disclosed.
You waved a bag around when you were making your opening statement. Did you bring bottles for any whiskey tastings that you were a part of?
There are no bottles of whiskey tasting.
Did you participate in any whiskey tastings that were sponsored or paid for by vendors who were paid by the Government of Canada for the ArriveCAN scandal?
Mr. Chair, this is a perfect example where things are taken out of context. And if I could, I'd like to address the minister.
A series of questions. If you can answer the questions, I'm sure you'll have a time to get to those particular details. Did you accept free alcohol from vendors who worked on ArriveCAN? Yes or no?
In the plural, no. There was one Zoom call event.
Thank you. Mr. McDonald, same question.
I had a package arrive at my house.
What was in the package?
There were little vials of whiskey.
Vials of whiskey?
Yes.
Okay.
These were after contracts were in place.
These would be the size that you'd get at a hotel or on an airplane?
Smaller.
Okay. And how many bottles?
4 or 5.
Like the bag. These were disclosed. What was the name of the professional standards office that you referenced, Mr. Rutano?
That was the Values and Ethics Office of the CBSA.
Did you disclose to the Values and Ethics Office your participation in and consumption of these products that were provided to you by a vendor who had been paid $20 million for work on this project?
So the disclosure happened to our VP on multiple occasions, as per the policy.
So why did the bag get disclosed but not the free drinks?
The bags were asked in advance, and we were asked if it was acceptable, and we took the steps and procedures ahead of time because we were aware of it ahead of time. The allegations and the development of this report insinuates that we didn't follow procedures.
Did you eat meals, snacks, or consume beverages at any time that were paid for by these vendors? And if so, which vendors?
Are you asking me? Yeah. So we did consume a shared platter. I had a few nachos and a couple of chicken wings and half a beer.
You know the date?
I don't have the date exactly in my mind.
Can you undertake to provide the date to the committee?
It was it would have been after we were allowed to.
Sir, I'll let you check your records and nail that down. Provide it to the committee along with the names of anyone else who was in attendance. Mr. McDonald, same question to you, please.
I think I had 3 zucchini sticks.
Same
and
event?
half of a beer. Same event.
Only time that you shared a meal that was paid for by these vendors?
That was paid for by vendors. I just want to make sure the committee is aware, number one, in the preliminary statement of falsehoods, there are allegations that there were dinners. those dinners were not necessarily vendor-oriented dinners or paid for by the dinners. And so that's why I'm answering the question honestly. I paid for my own meals.
Yeah, I haven't asked a question about that, but you did attend dinners with them, is what you're saying.
I have attended dinners with different vendors over the last 3 years that were disclosed per the policy to my supervisor.
Okay. It's interesting to me that the bag was disclosed to a professional standards office, but the free drinks and food were not. Mr. McDonald, are you being investigated by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police?
I don't believe that I am. I haven't been contacted by the RCMP, and I think even the statement of fact shows that the CBSA says themselves that I didn't do anything.
Mr. Rotano.
Same. I have not been contacted. I'm not aware of any being under any investigation.
So the Auditor General says the RCMP is investigating certain individuals pertaining to ethics and conflicts of interest. The Auditor General said so herself. Do you have any idea who is being investigated?
I'm not aware of who's being investigated.
Mr. McDonald, same question.
I'm not aware of anybody that's being investigated.
So there's millions of dollars being passed around. A vendor was allowed to write their own contract for CBSA. It doesn't make sense that some whiskey or meals or zucchini sticks would be sufficient in terms of influence. Do you know of any other individuals who work for the Government of Canada who received any material benefit from vendors that you can share with us today?
I'll start maybe. I'm not aware of any. Certainly when I was at the CBSA, as I testified last time, I did not see any wrongdoing.
Same question, Mr. Rotano.
Exactly the same. I am not aware of anybody who's received any sort of gifts or hospitality that are influenced them or influenced their actions.
My first question would be in response to Mr. Rotano's answer to my colleague, Mr. Bachrach. Did I hear you say that you were the individual who signed off on the contract requisition to PSPC for the first ArriveCAN contract awarded to GC Strategies?
So thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So to be clear, the requisition was the beginning of the process to put a contract in place. It wasn't the actual contract. And that was only done after the decision was rendered on which direction and vendor to go with to work on an ArriveCAN application. And that decision came down from our VP and president at the time.
Thank you. But you were the individual who signed off on that requisition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. I haven't seen the document that the OGGO was referring to, but it sounds in around the same time frame and area.
Thank you. I guess my next question does refer to the Auditor General's report. Why did you not pursue the alternatives given to you by PSPC to make this contract competitive? In other words, the Auditor General mentioned a suggestion which would have allowed a shorter bidding period of just 10 days, which would have worked with necessary timelines. Why did you not pursue that?
I'll start off if you want to jump in after, but so a couple of things, just to put some more context to it. 10 days is the actual timeline that would be put on the street, if you will, for vendors to participate. However, leading up to that, there's the development time to create a proposal, and that takes weeks, if not months, to do. Second, when we worked with PSPC, we worked in conjunction with them as well as our internal controllership with a targeted goal to move forward with an RFP as quickly as possible. The third thing is we were given direction from our superiors that we will not be able to stop. We didn't have the luxury of pausing during the pandemic, and so we followed that direction, and we were working with the experts in procurement and contracting, and we did the best we could with the tools that we had. But we'd never had the authorities to just make unilateral contracting decisions. I just want to reiterate that.
Thank you.
If I could just add a couple of things. The first contract that happened with GC Strategies was, I believe, for about $1.4 million. We were told at the time it was exceptional circumstances. The borders had closed. We had no idea where ArriveCAN was going. We had no idea what it would turn into. And we were told, go get this done. We need to get something out there. So I have to admit, like, the CBSA, and I say it as an agency, not Mr. Utano or not myself,
right,
but we did push back at PSPC. Oftentimes people say something can take 10 days, but it can also take 10 weeks.
Sure.
So,
thank you for that. I appreciate that explanation. Mr. Otano, you just said something that has piqued my interest when you talk about curating a proposal. Who is responsible to curate a proposal?
So as far as roles and responsibilities, I can tell you that as the acting DG or DG, we don't have that. We don't have the responsibility to write. We don't write RFPs. We don't do evaluations of submissions, and we don't select.
Who does?
Well, it's done in collaboration with the team. So there'd be
Okay.
there'd be technical authorities and others involved in that.
So can you tell me who was responsible for signing off on the second contract awarded to GC Strategies for ArriveCAN?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with that. So GC Strategies had met with the commercial branch and travelers branch. I wasn't part of it, and they call it a technical bake-off, but there were two companies that were showcasing their technology. I believe it was commercial branch chose the GC Strategies and wrote a justification for national security exemption. That justification went to the CFO, Jonathan Moore, who then wrote a letter to PSPC seeking approval for the national security exemption. I provided this evidence to all committee members. In that letter, it actually states that they had a preferred vendor who had done work with Transport Canada, hence the commercial ties. So we took that on because we were the IT team. But the genesis of the second contract was additional scope to tie into ArriveCAN that came from the business line.
Thank you. And I guess my next question was, who was responsible for signing off on the third contract awarded to GC Strategies? And a follow-up would be, who would be responsible for documenting all of these contracts?
The third contract, just to try and answer your question as quickly as possible, the third contract was for accessibility. I believe it was also done under the National Security Exemption banner, which provided PSPC and CBSA with availability to do a sole source. The reason that GC Strategies was chosen for the third contract was kind of like if you were adding scope to kitchen renovation. You're not going to go hire a net new contractor to come in, but you have to have a new contract for it. That's what PSPC said. The original two didn't have that in scope, so we needed a third contract. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
We have Ms. O'Gorman, we have the Auditor General, we have the Bottler report, we have all of these things, and you're essentially saying that all of these people are not representing the truth and that the committee should believe you. I'm finding this a little difficult to follow how we're to understand all of these contradictions that keep popping up in the testimony.
So that's fair. I mean, you read the preliminary statement of facts, so you will have seen that Bottler tried to get a contract not once but twice in order to just proceed with work with the CBSA.
And is that, just to stop you there, Mr. McDonald, is that contract
We're past our time. Do you have a very quick question, Mr. Bachrach?
Well, I'm wondering if you can provide evidence that Bottler is trying to seek a contract for compensation for the work they did, because that's not my understanding.
Well, it says it clearly in the document, so I don't know how to understand it other than Bottler sought a contract to provide the misconduct report that they used as the allegations. And in Mr. Utano's report, it says that they sought a contract in order to present as a witness or participate in the investigation. So,
Can I just add to that real quick?
We're really out of time, perhaps.
It
next.
wasn't. We're not saying that. CBSA said that.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Brock, please, for 5.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you for your attendance. I want to take my opening round with both of you to put a fine point on this issue. This discussion has to end, and it needs to end today as to who's responsible for the selection of GC Strategies. Canadians want to know. Canadians are rightfully angry that this two-person firm working out of their basement, doing no IT work, have collected almost $20 million in taxpayer funds. So I can understand why the government wants to shield themselves, the Justin Trudeau government wants to shield themselves from any responsibility. So I know the Auditor General was unable to precisely identify which individual. She made a suggestion, Mr. Utano, that perhaps you should accept responsibility for it. Her words were that you signed the requisition on behalf of the agency, which amounts to an exercise of delegated authority and carries with it responsibility and accountability. But Prior to that particular statement, did you not meet with the Auditor General's team?
We met with the Auditor General for approximately 30 minutes once I'm told, the report was already drafted. Essentially, I believe we were just a ticky box.
Okay. Mr. McDonald, you met with the AG team?
I met with the AG team the same day as Mr. Itano.
And did the issue as to who chose GC Strategies come up?
Yes, that was one of the first questions that came up. And
you provided documentation to support your theory as to who chose GC Strategies?
Yes, I did.
And who was that person again?
It was Mindone and the president.
Did you supply any information by way of an ATIP to the AG?
Yes, I supplied the same information that I put forward to OGGO to show the three components of all of the selections of GC strategies.
And within that ATIP, there was a briefing preparatory package which contained an item that I brought to the attention of departmental officials. Whose decision was it to contract GC? I'm going to read this out and I want an explanation. My office made the decision to pursue the contract with GC Strategies. The two proposals for the work were presented to the CIO and president, and the decision was made to proceed with GC Strategies as their proposal and approach aligned with what the CBSA was looking for, particularly rapid staff augmentation. The Deloitte proposal was a managed service using their cloud instance. This would have involved additional risk and did not align with our direction to build cloud mob competencies within the agency. Who are they referring to?
They're referring to Mindone and John Izowski, and the reason why it was written like that was because Mindone had a fake heart attack and Kelly Belanger took over for him. So the notes were updated so that Kelly Belanger could attend OGGO with Erin O'Gorman, as she did. The record will reflect it, and that's why it was written there. But the question you have to ask yourself is, who was the CIO and who was the president when the decision was made?
Who was the CIO at that time? Mindone. And the president?
John Izowski.
Osowski. Now, you've identified individuals who have misled the committee. I'm not going to use the word who misled. I want to know who lied to committee, who lied to parliamentarians, who lied to Canadians. Identify those players, please.
Well, frankly, if you look at that package that I provided to the OAG, there are three components. The first one shows clearly that Mindone and John Izowski were the ones that selected. The second...
Mindone lie to Canadians.
Mindone has completely lied to Canadians.
Did John Osowski lie to Canadians when he appeared at committee?
I can only assume that that's what he did, because this is what Erin O'Gorman's own documentation preparing for OGGO says. And even Erin O'Gorman pretended that she didn't know who selected GC Strategies, yet she was briefed on it.
Right.
Specifically, the third component says, please send this and the national security exemption request from Jonathan Moore that Mindone was copied on to Erin O'Gorman's own office. Like, it just doesn't make any sense that
when Erin O'Gorman appeared at committee last week, she was shocked that we were focusing so much attention on her. Did she lie to committee? Did she lie to Canadians that she had no responsibility or no knowledge as to who chose GC Strategies? Yes or no, sir?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. McDonald and Mr. Utano, I want to drill down on the mechanics of the internal investigation. I assume you're familiar with Mr. Lafleur's testimony here on February the 5th. He's conducting the internal investigation. He confirmed in his response to my questions that he is not an independent investigator, that he's not able to act independently. He's subject to the internal chain of command at CBSA. I emphasized at the time that I thought this was a deeply flawed process. Determinations of accountability require a proper external investigation in which powerful people, CBSA leadership, and politicians can be held accountable. The RCMP is investigating, but we also need to identify wrongdoing that falls short of criminal behavior. Why do you think the government is pursuing this internal investigation instead of an independent investigation into who is responsible?
Real brief, it's an attempt to scapegoat us and point fingers at us. If the question is around why do we think there's an issue with the internal investigation, I can answer that further, but I want to let maybe Mr. McDonald answer as well why he thinks.
Well, it's clear that this ArriveCAN issue has drawn national attention. It's clear that Bottler themselves have tried to influence the media and are a marketing machine. From the statements that they've made out loud, it's clear that they have also engaged with people that they call leadership, which is obviously a lot higher than Aaron O'Gorman. So I think Aaron O'Gorman and the CBSA are pretty much holding on to these allegations as hard as they can. And I don't know what the fabric is between those three things, but it sure seems like Min Doan, John Izowski, Aaron O'Gorman, nobody else at the CBSA or FAC or PSPC know anything, but these two guys here were the ones that were responsible for doing $60 million worth of work, contracting, and doing it so loosely that nobody can account for anything.
Okay. There is a serious discrepancy in the testimony around the timeline of this investigation that I think is important. Mr. Lafleur said they initiated an investigation in November of 2022. You said that the investigation was initiated into your conduct after your testimony in November of 2023. Did the internal investigation, specifically looking at allegations against you two, begin in November of 2022 or of 2023, and how can you, what evidence can you provide to support your position on that?
The document is protected B, but I believe it's my personal information, so I'll verify that I can share it. But I received a letter saying that the investigation for the Bottler allegations from 2022 was initiated 10 days after I testified here at OGGO. On November, I believe it was the 17th, 2023. And mine said initiated. Mr. Utano said reinitiated, which just doesn't make any sense to us.
Can I add some more clarification? So I learned this in 2023 November, that something was opened and closed, and I believe Ms. Dutt from Bottler AI confirmed that she got a call from Pierre Lessard, a chief security officer, saying the exact same thing that we told them in 2021 and the exact same thing that PSPC told them in the summer of 2023. This is a matter between you and your business partners, not the Government of Canada, and it appears to be a misunderstanding on how procurement and contracting works in the Government of Canada.
So you have written documentation to confirm that you can share with the committee, I hope, as soon as possible, that the government telling you in November of 2023 that they were either, in one case, initiating or in another case, reopening an investigation. Because if you can supply that to us, that explicitly contradicts the testimony that we received from Mr. Lafleur. Just quickly, because I want to get to another question. But
I can confirm it. If I'm able to provide it, I will. But the document says they are entering the fact-finding stage.
Right.
Which clearly goes.
So if what you said is accurate and if it's supported by the document, it would very clearly contradict the testimony that we heard from the investigator. You referenced the Prime Minister's words and suggested in your opening comments that it wasn't just a matter of other people in CBSA trying to put the whole blame for what happened onto YouTube, but you referenced the Prime Minister's comments. What do you think is motivating the Prime Minister's words? Why is he invested in the outcome of this investigation?
So I can start. It's a great question, and the answer is we don't know. We've been trying to access information to defend our character and our ability to defend against this, what's happening with this investigation. Our ATIPs have been delayed and blocked. Access to the original allegations have been denied. We keep trying to ask CBSA to clarify, but it's being denied. We don't know, and that's the issue. There's been cover-up and doubling down, if you will, to try and protect and withhold information from us. Information is deleted. We just saw an announcement from the Government of Canada that the internal ATIP machine within CBSA is down for the last 2 weeks. Something is going on, but this is what is concerning to us.
I guess I would just add, I'm not a politician and I don't want to get into politics, but there's a lot of it going on right now, and when we see what's happening with the OGGO report, when we see what's happening with this, it just seems like there's been a lack of accountability overall. And so I was kind of shocked when I saw the media reports on the news that the Prime Minister had said what he said, because you can't say that there will be consequences when you're saying that there's an investigation. And in this case, we haven't even been contacted by the RCMP. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
So how is it then, And you've mentioned that one of the members of, well, he's not a full-time member of the committee, he's part-time, but he comes in and he's reached out to you. When did that first happen? When were you first approached by a committee member?
Yes, so thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sousa, I think we've answered that, and I think we've committed to providing those timelines. To be completely honest, I don't have the exact dates and timelines in front of me. We did work with our council, and communications did happen through our council.
So did your council, did your council through you, did you give them authorizations to have documents shared with other members of the committee?
We authorized our council to do what is best in the best interest of his clients, and that'd be us.
So were you aware that your council was providing information? 'Cause obviously, you're telling me that neither one of you actually shared information with a member of the committee.
What we have said is that initially there were elements of the report that were shared. And
who shared
the truth?
Who shared them?
Shared through council.
So your council, so you did not have a direct conversation with members of the committee?
We have had direct conversations with that member of the committee, but we did not share.
Okay, so you have had, so you've been having conversations with a member of this committee. And the investigator then appears before this committee without other members of the committee having information at hand or having seen those documents, and then questioning the issues within that document that we do not want it to make
wrap
public.
up, Mr. Sousa, with a question.
So to each witness, have you directly or through your legal counsel confirmed you will participate with CBSA's Director General of Security and Professional Standards investigation? Yes or no?
He's not a director general, he's an executive director, and he's not a lead investigator, but we have confirmed in writing with him more than 3 times that we are willing to participate. We're just looking for a fair shot.
And we just want to we want to add to on the record, sir, is that we've asked for disclosure, we've asked for the original allegations, we've asked for our ATIPs to be processed, and we only got a copy of this PSF because of a motion here at OGGO. That was not disclosed to us during or before the request to come in for an interview. We've always articulated that we are ready and willing to participate, but let's have a fair and transparent one and have that disclosure as we've requested.
Mr. McDonald, do you acknowledge that the emails you presented to the committee on November 7th were the property of CBSA?
I haven't been shown anything that says that.
Were those emails that were exchanged during your employment at CBSA using
When everybody else exchanged emails in their testimony, were those emails the property of the CBSA as well? When Mr. Doan testified after I called him a liar and proved it, he came back and said that he had found emails that were deleted apparently, but he was able to find them.
The question was a fairly straightforward one, Mr. McDonald. Sure. Were those emails that were sent or received using your CBSA email account?
Yes.
Okay. And were those emails, do you acknowledge that those emails, because they were sent as part of your employment with CBSA, were the property of CBSA?
Answer that question, Mr. Chair. May I answer that question? When an ATIP is received, we are to divulge our emails. That then becomes the property of the Government of Canada as a whole, or even the requester. They pay a $5 fee and they get access to all our emails. So at that point, that's a great question, but if an ATIP is processed and emails are released, who owns the emails?
Well, the question was whether those emails are the property of CBSA, the emails that you brought to committee on November 7th. And, you know, because those emails were part of your employment there, they weren't yours to disclose to the committee. I guess my next question is, were you surprised then that your security clearance was revoked after that November 7th meeting? And was part of the reason your security clearance was revoked because you were disclosing emails that were the property of CBSA?
Mr. Chair, may I can answer that. Our emails were released through ATIP requests. And we did not process ATIP requests. We don't have that many. We don't work in the ATIP office. I think what we're saying then is that the ATIP office released documents that were the property of a certain agency. I don't think so. The emails belong to the Government of Canada and Canadians. Hence why we have an ATIP process.
So the documents that you brought to the November 7th meeting were all public domain?
Every document that I provided no documents that were protected. And furthermore, let's go back to the investigation, the letter that we received and the preliminary statement of facts, and none of it suggests that I provided secret information to jurisdictions that I shouldn't have. So I appreciate the line of questioning, and I'm happy to answer your questions. I will always tell the truth, but
Okay, we're just seeking
my
clarity
suspension
on-
wasn't due to the fact that I testified at this committee and provided evidence as is being suggested.
So despite the unsuccessful efforts of my Liberal colleagues today and actually throughout this week to try to spin the narrative that Canadians received really good value for the $60 million wasted on this Arrive scam, we often hear that it saved lives, and there's really no empirical evidence to suggest that one life was actually saved, yet the Liberals continue with this narrative. And I think Canadians would actually prefer the independent voice of the Auditor General on the issue of value and not biased Liberal members. So I'm going to put that phrase to you in her report. The Canadian Border Services Agency's disregard for policies, controls, and transparency in the contracting process restricted opportunities for competition and undermined value for money. Emphasis, value for money. So the focus that I have for the amount of time I have left is to really drill down on the guess that the Auditor General made with respect to what this fiasco costs Canadians. It's almost $60 million, but that doesn't include the probably millions of dollars that were paid to the federal public service. So can you offer any suggestion as to how many millions of dollars on top of that $60 million was actually paid to the professional federal public service?
I'll start with that. So with respect to responsibilities on the oversight of what this whole thing costs, that does not fall on the technical delivery teams. So to give you an estimate on what it costs to pay public servants, I don't have that answer, Mr. Brock.
But you can confirm that federal public servants did work over the number of years that the 177 different applications of this Arrive scam was being rolled out. We did have federal public servants working, correct?
That's
Absolutely,
correct.
we have.
Absolutely. Okay.
And not just
there's a cost.
Not just within the agency, the CBSA, but we also have to look at PHAC and the other
Absolutely.
agencies. And then we're not responsible for providing that whole.
Absolutely. Okay. And we don't know what that number is, but
don't
it's
know.
going to be more than the $60 million estimate. And we also have evidence from the Auditor General that there were actual millions of dollars paid out to contractors who did zero work on the ArriveCAN, but actually unrelated work. Now, do you have evidence for the time that you were at CBSA of entities coming forward, knowing that there was a pot of unlimited resources to take advantage of, seeking millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars for projects unrelated to ArriveCAN? Mr. McDonald.
I don't have any evidence of wrongdoing, just to be clear. I think what I would say is that there were divisions, federal public servants who wanted to associate with ArriveCAN so that they could get the funding that they needed to move their initiatives forward.
Give me some examples, sir.
Well, there were a few in commercial. There were a few other in travelers. We had some corollary projects that we had already started, some no-touch mobile, the e-declaration, some of these things that we were trying to work on. And if you could just put it under an ArriveCAN tagline, it was easier to achieve the funding and get the budget that you wanted from the finance branch. So oftentimes what people would do is if they had overall agendas, they would associate it with what was going on in the pandemic, and then ArriveCAN, they would get the budget for it, and then they would move it closer to it.
Essentially lying to access taxpayer money using the tagline ArriveCAN. Is that fair to say?
I have to be honest with you, I wouldn't call it a lie. I would call it perhaps an exaggeration, but they would align. what they were hoping to achieve as their target with what was happening as ArriveCAN to obtain their outcome. It's a stretch. There's a very big difference between a stretch and a lie, in my opinion. But I never saw anybody nefariously lie so that they could get access to hundreds of thousands of dollars. But let's say they were loosely coupled.
Mr. McDonald, I believe in black and white. I don't believe in gray. Okay? If people are accessing taxpayer funds that has absolutely nothing to do with the ArriveCAN application and development, they are misleading government officials to access taxpayer funds. I call that misleading. I call that an absolute lie. How many millions of dollars can you estimate was actually spent on individuals, organizations that you just described?
I left after the first year. I wouldn't even be able to hazard to guess, but I would say the number would be higher than $1 million if you totaled it from my vantage point.
Okay.
That is your time.
We've heard these repeated assertions that there's been no misconduct and no wrongdoing in the procurement of the ArriveCAN app, and yet we have the RCMP currently conducting an investigation. Are you suggesting that this investigation is unnecessary?
So thank you for the question. So we're not sure if we're even involved in the RCMP investigation. We haven't been contacted by the RCMP in their investigation. What we did assert is that we're concerned with the internal administrative investigation. There is conflicts of interest, there's bias and missing context in all the allegations presented in the PSF. The RCMP did not create the PSF. Moreover, we have evidence of demonstrating that continuity of evidence was not even maintained. You've heard about the accusations around deletion of emails, and now you've heard also about information is being withheld. Never mind, the original allegation is still yet is outstanding despite us asking for disclosure. This has nothing to do with the RCMP. Right. This is all to do with the internal administration that's being led by the CBSA. So yes, I do have severe concerns with the CBSA administrative investigation for those reasons.
You've repeatedly expressed concern about the Auditor General's findings. You've expressed a lack of belief in the preliminary statement of fact from the internal investigation. You have trouble with the Bottler report, and yet the RCMP seems to think that based on what they've been given, there's a basis for an RCMP investigation here. I'm trying to understand, these two perspectives. One is nothing to see here, and the other one is lots to see here, very important, need to get to the bottom of this. How should the public understand that discrepancy?
Jump in. Number one, I just want to clarify.
Please.
Some of these are not easy to answer quickly, sir. We're not questioning the AG's findings. We're questioning the inputs. If the AG wasn't given the proper inputs, then she wouldn't be able to have the proper outputs. And I think everybody understands that. But we're not questioning her or her office at all. And I want to be very clear about that. If the RCMP has something to investigate, both Mr. Utano and I feel they should be free to conduct their investigation. What we feel very strongly about is that the CBSA is trying to cover something up. They've doubled down, and they've created this false preliminary statement of falsehood just to basically destroy our credibility. They shared it with our employers when it clearly wasn't ready. There's clearly facts within it that are just so false and incorrect. It's unbelievable, and that's what we have a problem with. That's why we went to the courts, Mr. Bachrach. Just to be clear, we're not asking for the investigation to go away. We're asking for an independent investigation because we don't believe the CBSA is capable of doing one.
In response to a previous question, you said the app cost $6.3 million. Was that at the conclusion of your time at CBSA, or are you saying that that's the cost of the app?
Thank you for the question. That wasn't the answer I was trying to give for the cost of the app. The $6.3 million was the aggregate costs that I was tracking over the first year, which is what the OAG put in her report.
Increased by tenfold in the following year.
It increased
to $54 million and then to at least $60 million by the Auditor General's accounting.
I think from the Auditor General's accounting, from what I recall, and I'm using rough numbers, it went from 6.3 to 25 to 25. And I say that, and I know that doesn't add up to 60, but it adds up to pretty close. So whether it was 27 or 28,
right.
But yeah.
So the app cost $60 million.
I would say the program of ArriveCAN.
The question is, sir, do you disagree with the Auditor General's findings that ArriveCAN cost $60 million? Do you agree, yes or no?
I agree that the costs that she tracked were
$60 million.
$60 million, yes.
Do you think taxpayers got good value for money with this app? It's a pretty straightforward question.
I think that what we were looking at when we were building it while I was there was how we could keep airports having people move through, how we could get provinces and territories.
Do you think it's good value for money for the 10,000 people who were wrongly, at least 10,000 who are wrongly quarantined for 14 days, placed under house arrest under threat of jail? Do you think that they think it's good value for money?
Quarantine didn't even exist when I left, and I guess I would say that through that question, you can see the complexity of what got created in the decisions that were made by FAC and CBSA and others.
A very expensive product that failed Canadians in a terrible, terrible way. In your opening statement, you said you believed that people were being extorted for government contracts. Who? Just the name, please. Who is being extorted?
Go ahead.
I can answer that. What we said, and it's not what we said, it's what CBSA said, that the services for sharing the misconduct report was in exchange for contract services. And for participating in the interview...
Looking for the name, sir.
Ratika Dutt and Amir Morajev are the owners of Bottler. They are the ones who put in the allegations initially. They sent them to Aaron O'Gorman and leadership.
Okay.
And then they asked for a contract to be able to give the misconduct report and another contract
what tech
to
would
participate.
GC Strategies have been able to showcase in the bake-off that you mentioned?
Thank you for the question. I wasn't there and I'm not 100% certain, but I believe there was a company in Ottawa that they partnered with that was huge into data and analytics and had done some work at Transport Canada. And so there were two companies, and I think they showcased what they were capable of doing and what they had done before.
Raise red flags that you have a company there showing off another company. So if GC Strategies was making 30% on $20 million, which, as I pointed out yesterday, with some quick math, is enough to hire 10 full-time public servants for 25 years, that $20 million contract. So GC Strategies making 30% on a $20 million contract to make introductions. The introduction was made. These guys are using Google searches. Did no one see that using a company, a middleman that's cutting 30% off this, did no one see that was insane?
Maybe I can opine in here. So with respect to skill sets and the costs, we are, the public service and servants are not Lego pieces or interchangeably used in the same way. For example, we did reach out to CDS, which is the Canadian Digital Services, looking to leverage a program where we would bring in expertise. The annual cost would have been $400,000 per person, plus the EBPs, the employee benefits. The skill sets are not interchangeable or...
We're out of time there. Who has deleted records related to ArriveCAN?
So the reports that we've seen in the media have pointed to...
Do you know of anyone? Can you assert? And if you can assert that anyone has deleted records, I just need the name. Yeah. I'm very short on time. Just a name.
Mindone has deleted emails, and we did not have our accounts locked down until after we testified, and we are very concerned that our emails have been deleted because they won't give us records of who's accessed our emails.
So would you say this is a cover-up?
I believe there's the potential for it, and all we've been trying to do is seek justice and fairness and transparency.
Why do you think that there's a cover-up?
It's a great question, and we want to know as well, and we've been asking for information and disclosure.
If we have the time, I told you guys about Mindone threatening me, and nobody did anything. Kelly Belanger was nowhere to be found in the OAG, keeps on saying that there was a lack of project management. Her husband was convicted of sexually assaulting young girls, got convicted and went to jail, and she wasn't around. I had been asked, and Mr. Utano had been asked to help her out while she was gone for family problems. Aaron O'Gorman didn't do anything when she found out that I was threatened. Mr. Doan had threatened somebody else and been docked pay, so she knew there was a pattern of this behavior. Like, when we talk about why there would be a reason or a separation, I never had any problems when I was at the CBSA. I got asked to go to Health Canada because of my record at the CBSA and my record previous to it. So I don't know. Neither does Mr. Utano, who had a spotless record we're just trying to get the right information. We're trying to have transparency. And now, after everything that's happened, we want independence from what the CBSA has done.
We've had multiple witnesses reluctant to appear, citing health issues. This is a serious and repeat problem for us as we try to get to the bottom of this scandal. Mr. McDonald, you referenced in passing someone having a fake heart attack, which is quite a serious allegation. I wonder if you'd be willing to flesh that out a little bit. Who did this, when, and for what purpose?
Well, the reason why I say that is after Mindone threatened me, I reported his threat to my supervisor, who called over to Ted Gallivan and talked to the executive vice president at the CBSA. I don't know what their discussion entailed. I only know that the feedback that I heard was that it seemed likely, because of behaviors of Mindone, that Mindone would be going on sick leave. Within a week and a half, this is prior to OGGO happening, Mr. Doan went on sick leave, and I got a text message from Kelly Belanger saying Min is in the hospital having his heart checked. He really wanted me to say thank you for the message that you sent, the one that got me in so much trouble with the reporter because I had sent him notes on what he should say at OGGO. Then miraculously he comes back to work, moves over to Treasury Board, and gets promoted to the Chief Technology Officer. That certainly couldn't be less of a stressful job than he was in before if he had heart problems. And then we have OGGO coming up again, and I'm under the understanding that Mr. Doan again is now on medical leave and can't participate. So I can tell you that I'm not going to disclose my medical issues, but I got a doctor's note for 7 months from my family doctor who's known me since I was 8 months old, and I'm still coming here because it's a matter of integrity and it's a matter of importance for me and my children, my wife, and my family to know that I'll stick up for myself and that I'll tell the truth.
Thank you. We'll persist in challenging all aspects of your testimony, but we do appreciate that you are here when others have not chosen to come, and we've had to go to quite lengths to get them to come. You allege that Bottler received a contract in exchange for making certain allegations. Is that correct? Is that what?
Yep, go ahead.
So just for clarity, we didn't say that. CBSA said that.
Okay. You've talked in the context of this situation about Ms. O'Gorman, Mr. Osowski, Mr. Doan, but you've also referenced leadership in a somewhat sort of oblique way. Is the implication that there were higher ups involved in these conversations with Bottler, people at the political level, people at PCO? Is it beyond those three people?
Yeah, well, I mean, our life has been pretty much turned upside down, and we've been trying to figure things out. There's not a lot of people that are giving us information, but through our discovery, we can tell you that Bottler was very close with Minister Miller. They even knew his chief of staff by name and waved to her in an interview. We know that they sat at the top of Justice Canada, and they were given a seat at the table with the top of Justice Canada. We know that Amir Morajev was in videos with Justin Trudeau, and we know that he was part of speaking engagement on AI that Justin Trudeau was kind of the guest speaker of. So I don't know, from my vantage point, I don't know who my MP's chief of staff is by name, but yeah, when they say leadership, it either means the clerk of the Privy Council or politicians, in my view.
Can I add one more thing, sir?
Please.
I just also want to highlight that through an ATIP, we found an email directly from Ratika Dutt to the President Osowski in March
8th, after we started the feasibility study.
Unbeknownst to us, there was some other dealings going on in partnering with some other project. We don't have the details. Mr. McDonald or myself were unaware of this, but through ATIPs, we discovered that there was direct conversations right to the top and working on other initiatives.
Right to the top being?
I can confirm.
It basically says that the Minister of Justice had already approved a scope for work that had nothing to do with the feasibility study. So,
And I just note, of course, we heard recently that if the information commissioner has concerns about information not being provided in a criminal way, she refers that to the attorney general, who is the same person, the justice minister, who apparently has these relationships. Are you concerned regarding the prime minister that we have an internal investigation subject to the existing chain of command, that the prime minister sits effectively at the top of that chain of command? Are you concerned about the risk of political involvement?
Yes or no question, gentlemen. We're out of time.
I'd rather not weigh into that. That's way too political for anything that I'm involved with. I'm concerned that we're not getting a fair fight and that information is being withheld that would allow us to defend ourselves from these egregious allegations.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. General. Final round, Mr. Brock, please, for 5.
Thanks, Chair. In her report, the Auditor General states as follows: the CBSA's documentation, financial records, and controls were so poor that they were unable to determine the precise cost of the ArriveCAN application. She further stated and opined that in her multiple decades of service to this country, in the role of the AG, as well as her audit work, she has never seen such worse record keeping in her life. That was attributable to the CBSA. Were the two of you responsible for poor record keeping, yes or no?
We did not have information management responsibilities, especially with respect to project management.
Thank you,
and
Mr.
invoices.
Utano.
No, we were not responsible for
Thank
overall
you.
financial.
We all know Mr. Mindone, the vice president, is alleged to have miraculously have 4 years worth of relevant emails that have disappeared, either by corruption or by intentional deletion. Approximately 4 years worth of emails, there has been some suggestion that represents roughly 1,700 emails. Is that figure accurate or is it much higher?
The figure would be much higher, would be in the tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands. Do you believe, sir, that there is an effort by political officials and senior management at CBSA and other departments to destroy incriminatory and problematic documents related to ArriveCAN? Yes or no?
I would have no knowledge of anything political, but it would seem to me that based on the state of affairs and observations by the AG, I can only assume that there's no way public servants would behave in such a reckless manner. It's just impossible.
Thank you. Mr. Utalo, your views?
I think I just want to opine in, there's a concerted effort of holding back information, and that's what's concerning. Whether it's through their ATIPs, through access in the internal investigation, or what we're being alleged to. It's all being held back, and that's what's concerning.